Most people walk through life thinking they're strong, but deep down, they're fragile. And they know it. One harsh word, one bad day, one unexpected bill, and everything crumbles. They lose their temper, their motivation, their focus. They fall apart because their strength is an illusion built on comfort, not on character. We live in a world that rewards softness, that tells you to chase convenience and avoid discomfort at all costs. But that mindset doesn't build power. It builds dependency. It creates people who are emotionally unstable, mentally unfocused, and spiritually empty. And here's the hard truth. Most people will stay that way. Not because they're incapable, but because they've made a habit out of avoiding what makes them strong. They chase motivation instead of discipline. They react to emotions instead of controlling them. They want results without struggle. They want peace without sacrifice. But Stoics choose a different path. They choose the hard way. They train their minds, temper their emotions, and stand tall in the face of pain. While most people look for a way out, Stoics look for a way through. They don't rely on external validation. They don't chase applause. They live by principle, not by popularity, because they know that true strength isn't loud. It's silent, steady, and earned through suffering. And in today's world, that makes them rare. You can feel it, can't you? That pull inside you. The part that knows you were made for more. The part that's tired of being ruled by weakness, excuses, and temporary highs. That voice inside that says enough is enough. That voice is your strength waking up. This video is not just a story about philosophy. It's a mirror, a call, a challenge to stop living like most people and start thinking like a Stoic. Because the truth is, the world doesn't need more soft, reactive men. It needs men of virtue, discipline, and courage. The kind of man who doesn't flinch when life hits hard. The kind who stands up when others fall. And that strength is not something you're born with. It's something you build. And you build it by choosing discipline over distraction, purpose over pleasure, control over chaos. The Stoics understood this centuries ago. They didn't have easy lives. They faced war, exile, poverty, betrayal. But they didn't break. They didn't run. They didn't blame. They endured. They grew stronger. And now their wisdom is here, waiting for anyone willing to listen, to apply, to become unbreakable. So if you're tired of feeling soft, tired of living small, tired of being easily shaken by things that don't deserve your energy, this message is for you. It's time to stop pretending and start transforming. This is your wake-up call. Because most people will stay weak. But you don't have to. Stoicism offers a way out. A way forward. A way to become the man you were meant to be. Starting now. Most people are slaves to emotion, and they don't even realize it. They believe they are making conscious decisions, that they're in control of their actions. But the truth is, their emotions are the puppeteers pulling the strings. One moment of anger, and they ruin relationships. One wave of sadness, and they spiral into inaction. One rush of envy, and they waste energy comparing themselves to others. They live their lives reacting instead of responding. And that's the definition of slavery. Being ruled by something other than your own reason. The Stoics saw this clearly, centuries before psychology ever gave it a name. Epictetus said, "It's not events that disturb us, but our interpretation of them." In other words, it's not what happens to you. It's how you process it. Most people don't process. They just react. Someone cuts them off in traffic, and their blood boils. They get criticized at work, and they become defensive. A partner disagrees with them, and they lash out or shut down. All of this is the result of being emotionally untrained. Imagine giving a toddler a steering wheel on the highway. That's how most adults operate. Their inner child is behind the wheel, emotional and impulsive, driving their life into chaos. But the Stoics believe that emotions are not the enemy. They are information, signals, not commands. Anger can point you toward injustice. Fear can alert you to danger. Sadness can show you what you value. But when you treat emotions as instructions, you lose your power. That's when you become a slave. The strong man doesn't repress his emotions. He respects them, observes them, but never obeys them blindly. Most people don't have that strength. They're so used to being yanked around by every feeling that comes up, they think it's normal. But ask yourself, when was the last time you paused in the middle of anger and asked, "Is this helping me?" When was the last time you felt fear and said, "Let me examine this before I act"? Probably never. Because no one taught you to do that. Society teaches emotional indulgence, not discipline. Social media amplifies every feeling. News thrives on outrage. Advertisements sell comfort, not resilience. Everything around you encourages you to feel more and think less. But the Stoics practice the opposite. They slowed things down. They examined their inner world. They questioned their first impulses. Marcus Aurelius wrote to himself every day, reflecting on his emotions and taming his ego. Why? Because he knew that power without control is dangerous. That being the emperor of Rome meant nothing if he couldn't govern his own heart. Now think about the average person today. Controlled by likes, addicted to attention, triggered by opinions. They can't sit in silence for 5 minutes without reaching for distraction. That's not freedom. That's emotional slavery. And the worst part? They don't even know they're in chains. They think being expressive is being authentic. But authenticity isn't about blurting out everything you feel. It's about aligning your actions with your values, even when your emotions try to pull you in the opposite direction. That's what the Stoics mastered. They didn't become robots. They became disciplined. And there's a big difference. Most people equate emotional control with coldness. But it's not coldness, it's clarity. When you're clear, you don't need to yell to be heard. You don't need to prove your worth. You don't need to win every argument. You understand that reacting out of ego only multiplies your problems. Let's look at how this emotional slavery plays out in everyday life. Someone gets ghosted and takes it as a personal attack. Instead of seeing it as a reflection of the other person's inconsistency, they spiral into self-doubt. That's slavery. Or take money. Most people spend emotionally, not strategically. They shop when they're sad. They buy to impress. They overextend to feel important. That's not wealth. That's impulse. Or in fitness, they quit when it gets hard. They avoid the gym when they feel tired. They eat to soothe feelings instead of fuel the body. Emotion controls their health, not reason. It's everywhere. In relationships, careers, even spiritual life. Most people are led by emotion first, principle second. But a Stoic reverses that. A Stoic sees an emotional wave coming and chooses whether to ride it, resist it, or let it pass. That's mastery. Imagine if every person stopped treating emotion as law and started treating it as feedback. Imagine how many fights would be avoided, how much money would be saved, how much energy would be reclaimed. This isn't about becoming emotionless. It's about becoming emotionally sovereign. Epictetus was born into slavery, yet mentally he was free. Why? Because he trained his thoughts. He knew that no one could make him feel inferior unless he allowed it. No one could control his mind unless he surrendered it. That's real power. And that's what most people lack today. Not money, not talent, not opportunities, but emotional sovereignty. So how do you break free? First, you have to observe. Start watching your reactions like a scientist. When something upsets you, don't just react. Ask why. Where is this coming from? What's the story I'm telling myself? Second, pause. Even 3 seconds of space between stimulus and response gives your reason time to take the wheel. Third, choose principle. Decide what matters most to you: peace, integrity, discipline, and act in alignment with that, even when your feelings beg you to do the opposite. And fourth, repeat. Every day. Because this isn't a one-time fix. It's a lifelong practice. Most people stay slaves to emotion because they never stop to question it. They live inside the story their feelings tell them, without realizing they're the author. But you don't have to. You can step out of that narrative. You can choose to respond, not react. You can become stronger, calmer, more grounded. Not by avoiding emotions, but by mastering them. That's what the Stoics did. And that's what you can do too. Because in the end, freedom isn't doing whatever you feel. It's being strong enough to choose what's right, even when it's hard. Emotion says quit. Discipline says go. Emotion says lash out. Wisdom says wait. Emotion says give up. Purpose says keep moving. So ask yourself, who's in charge of your life? Your feelings? Or your philosophy? Most people will live and die without ever answering that question. But you? You're here because part of you is ready to take the chains off. And once you do, there's no going back. That's when strength begins. That's when Stoicism becomes more than just an idea. It becomes your way of life, the prison of comfort. Why weakness feels safe but destroys you. Weakness isn't always loud. In fact, it's usually quiet, comfortable, and socially acceptable. It hides behind modern luxuries, blends into routines, and disguises itself as self-care. Most people don't stay weak because they're physically incapable. They stay weak because weakness feels easy. It doesn't ask anything from you. It doesn't demand discipline, sacrifice, or delayed gratification. Weakness feels warm. It tells you, you've had a long day. You deserve to scroll. It whispers, you can start tomorrow, rest today. And before you know it, you've built a lifestyle around avoiding pressure. That's the prison of comfort. You lock yourself inside with your own habits, and then convince yourself you're free. But what Stoicism teaches is brutally clear. The things that feel good in the moment often leave you broken in the long run. And the things that feel hard now are usually the path to lasting power. Marcus Aurelius wrote that you should not waste what is left of your life in guessing what others are doing or thinking. That's not just a warning against gossip. It's a wake-up call to reclaim your energy from distractions. The truth is, we have more tools, more knowledge, and more access to opportunity than any generation in history. But most people use all of that for entertainment, not elevation. Everywhere you look, the world is selling escape. Instant gratification is the most profitable business model ever invented. Apps are built to hijack your attention. Foods are engineered to keep you hooked. Influencers make weakness look cool by glamorizing laziness, victimhood, and emotional volatility. And while you're being fed endless comfort, your edge is slowly being dulled. You lose the fire, the discipline, the grit. And then when life punches you in the face, you don't know how to respond. That's the hidden cost of comfort. It trains you to expect ease. And when ease disappears, so does your strength. The Stoics trained themselves the opposite way. Seneca used to sleep on the floor once a month, eating the bare minimum, just to remind himself, this is what I fear? This is what I've been avoiding. Because when you voluntarily embrace discomfort, you build psychological armor. You become resilient not by running from a fire, but by walking into it and learning that you can survive. Modern people think resilience is something you're born with. It's not. It's built through repetition, through small choices made daily. Every time you skip the dopamine hit, Every time you choose effort over ease, you are becoming someone harder to break. But most people never reach that point. They live in a constant loop of soothing themselves. They use food, noise, screens, gossip, and overindulgence not because they're happy, but because they're numb. That's the most dangerous part of weakness. It doesn't always look like suffering. Sometimes it just looks like scrolling for hours. Sometimes it just looks like skipping the gym again. Sometimes it looks like laughing with people who don't challenge you. And you can go years like that. Comfortable, distracted, weak, until something big happens. An illness, a betrayal, a financial collapse, and you realize you're not equipped to handle real pain. Because you never trained for it. That's when Stoicism steps in like a cold slap to the face. It doesn't coddle you. It doesn't care about your excuses. It says, you must be prepared to lose everything and still remain yourself. Because if your peace can be taken away by an external event, then it was never real peace. If your strength disappears when things get hard, then it was never true strength. That's what most people misunderstand about toughness. They think it's about being aggressive. Stoicism shows you it's about being immovable. When everything around you is chaos and your mind remains clear, that's power. When people insult you and you don't flinch, that's control. When the world pushes you to react emotionally and you stay grounded, that's freedom. And you don't get that from comfort. You get that from challenge. You get that from deliberately putting yourself in situations that test you. That's why real growth happens when you're uncomfortable. The Stoics didn't just tolerate discomfort. They invited it. They believed the obstacle is the way. Meaning, whatever you're avoiding is likely the very thing that will strengthen you. Afraid of being alone? Spend time in solitude. Hate waking up early? Train yourself to do it. Scared of public failure? Put yourself in positions where you might fail. And do it anyway. Because every time you voluntarily face pain, you take power away from fear. You rewire your brain to stop seeking comfort and start seeking excellence. The average man today avoids stress like it's poison. But to a Stoic, stress is a forge. It burns away weakness. It shows you what you're made of. It sharpens your soul. The gym hurts. So does building a business, raising a family, saying no to temptation. But that pain is productive. That pain is what builds you. Avoiding pain is what destroys you. Because weakness doesn't announce itself. It just slowly takes over. You don't feel it right away. You feel it when you can't stay consistent. When you break your own promises. When your self-respect is gone, and you don't know why. That's when the cost becomes obvious. And by then, it's usually deep. That's why you must choose your pain. Discipline or regret. That's the choice Stoicism forces you to make. Discipline is hard in the moment. Regret is hard forever. Most people choose the former without realizing it. They think they're choosing ease, but they're just postponing pain. A Stoic chooses to suffer now so he can be strong later. That's what makes the difference. So if you feel weak, if you feel lost, if you feel like life is passing you by, don't look for motivation. Look for challenge. Train your body. Sharpen your mind. Guard your time. Speak with purpose. Endure discomfort. And above all, reject the lie that comfort is the goal. Because it's not. Strength is the goal. Clarity is the goal. Peace under pressure is the goal. And those things are only found on the other side of struggle. The prison of comfort might feel nice at first, but it slowly kills everything inside you. Your drive, your courage, your potential. Stoicism hands you the key, but it's up to you to use it. Most people won't. Most people will stay soft. Stay average. Stay safe. But not you. You didn't come this far to live behind padded walls. You came to live wide awake. Fully alive. unshakably strong. And to get there, you'll need to do what most never will. Face discomfort and turn it into power. That's the Stoic way. That's your way forward. Emotional discipline. The Stoic superpower that most people lack. When people think of strength, they imagine muscles, money, or dominance. But the Stoics knew the deepest form of strength wasn't physical or material. It was emotional discipline. The ability to govern yourself when everything inside you is screaming to lose control. That's the rarest and most necessary power in the modern world. Because today, everyone is reacting. Everyone is offended. Everyone is rushing to speak, to prove, to post. People wear their emotions on their sleeves and let them dictate their decisions. They get angry and say things they regret. They get anxious and run from responsibility. They feel insecure and lash out, or shut down. All of this, every outburst, every self-sabotaging moment, is the result of one thing: emotional slavery. You become a puppet to feelings you never trained yourself to understand, let alone master. But a Stoic is different. A Stoic doesn't deny emotions. He disciplines them. He observes without obeying. He feels without being ruled. That's why Stoicism isn't just a philosophy. It's emotional warfare, and the battlefield is inside you. Take Marcus Aurelius, Emperor of Rome, the most powerful man in the known world. Yet in his journal, Meditations, he never boasts. He never flexes. He reminds himself daily to stay humble, to be patient, to resist anger, to endure pain with dignity. Why? Because he knew the true war wasn't against enemies or politics. It was against ego, emotion, and impulse. Most people today don't fight that war. They surrender without knowing it. They let stress drive their choices. They let mood shape their identity. They think if they feel something, it must be true. But feeling something doesn't make it true. It just means you're human. What you do with that feeling, that's what determines your power. Epictetus, born a slave, said it best. If someone succeeds in provoking you, realize that your mind is complicit in the provocation. In other words, nobody can drag you into emotional chaos unless you let them. That's a revolutionary mindset, because it means you are not a victim of what happens. You're a steward of how you respond. Let's break this down with real-world examples. You wake up in a bad mood. Most people treat that like a weather report, something they can't change. So they move through the day sulking, passive, reactive. But a Stoic recognizes, mood is not destiny. It's just a signal, something to notice, then move beyond. Or let's say someone insults you. The weak man gets defensive, maybe even attacks back. But the Stoic pauses, asks, is this true? Does this deserve my energy? Am I so fragile that words control me? 9 times out of 10, the answer is no. And with that clarity, you take back control. That's emotional discipline. Interrupting your autopilot reactions with conscious thought. But it's not just about avoiding negativity. It's about managing success too. Most people get one compliment and lose focus. One win, and they stop trying. Their emotional highs are just as dangerous as their lows. But the Stoic stays centered. He doesn't get too excited when praised, and doesn't fall apart when criticized. His emotional state is not a roller coaster. It's a calm ocean. Deep, still, powerful. Now you might ask, how do I develop this kind of control? The answer isn't complicated, but it is difficult. Step 1 is awareness. You cannot discipline what you do not observe. Start paying attention to your triggers. What makes you angry? What makes you anxious? What situations cause you to spiral? Don't just feel. Analyze. Treat your emotions like data. Step 2 is delay. The Stoics taught that a pause, even for a few seconds, can stop the fire from spreading. That moment of stillness between stimulus and response is where freedom lives. Someone criticizes you? Pause. Someone cuts you off in traffic? Breathe. That delay gives your reason time to engage. It separates you from your reflex. And over time, that space grows. Step 3 is reframing. The Stoics were masters of changing perspective. If something made them angry, they asked, "Is this worth my peace?" If something scared them, they asked, "What opportunity is this revealing?" They rewired their responses not with force, but with philosophy. And step 4 is practice. Discipline is like a muscle. It grows through repetition. Every time you control a reaction, you're not just avoiding a mistake. You're building strength. Think of emotional discipline as armor, not to make you cold, but to make you untouchable. The insults bounce off. The noise doesn't penetrate. The stress doesn't shake you. You walk into chaos with clarity, not because the world is easy, but because your mind is trained. That's Stoicism. And that's rare, because most people are emotionally flammable. The smallest spark sets them off. The Stoic, on the other hand, is fireproof, not because he never feels, but because he never lets feelings lead. That's a superpower. In business, it makes you strategic. In relationships, it makes you patient. In crisis, it makes you dependable. It's the trait that separates leaders from followers, warriors from victims. But here's the thing. Emotional discipline doesn't mean emotionless. Stoicism has been misunderstood for centuries as a cold, detached way of living. But read the words of the Stoics, and you'll find immense depth, even tenderness. Marcus Aurelius spoke of love, of community, of compassion. Epictetus urged his students to act with kindness and understanding. Seneca wrote about friendship and beauty and joy. The difference is, they didn't let those emotions cloud their reason. They loved without losing themselves. They cared deeply, but acted wisely. That's what modern men need. Not less emotion, but better direction for emotion. A higher standard. A more stable foundation. Because emotion is not weakness, it's power, but only when it's mastered. So ask yourself, who's in charge, your emotions or your principles? When life gets hard, do you crumble or stay calm? When someone disrespects you, do you react or respond? When fear rises, do you freeze or move forward? The answers to those questions reveal your strength. Not your job, not your body. Not your bank account. Your ability to stay grounded in chaos. That's real power. That's Stoic power. And it's available to you right now. Not someday. Not when life is easier. But now. In this moment. In your next decision. That's where emotional discipline is forged. In the small, daily acts of control. And over time, those small acts build a man who cannot be shaken. Not because life is kind, but because he is strong. Most people will never live like that. They'll remain at the mercy of feelings, reacting to every storm, mistaking noise for urgency, letting moods define their identity. But not you. You've seen the truth now. You've felt the pull of strength. And the next time your emotions rise, you won't be a slave. You'll be a Stoic. Calm. Clear. Controlled. That's the difference. That's the edge. That's what makes you unbreakable. The modern world breeds weakness. Why Stoic strength is rare today. We live in a world where weakness is not just tolerated, it's rewarded. In fact, modern culture often mistakes weakness for virtue. Emotional overreaction is labeled authenticity. Laziness is hidden behind the mask of self-love. Constant distraction is branded as being connected. We've built a society that gives trophies for simply existing and shames the pursuit of toughness as being outdated or toxic. But deep down, people know something is off. Because despite all the comforts, technology, and supposed progress, anxiety is through the roof. Depression is rampant. Purpose feels out of reach. And the average person feels less in control of themselves than ever before. The truth is simple. Modern life makes it easy to avoid the hard path. And the hard path is where strength is built. Most people are weak today not because they lack ability, but because the world constantly offers them a way out of struggle, out of discomfort, out of growth. Let's look around. Almost every convenience in our lives is designed to make us do less. You don't need to walk. There's a ride. You don't need to cook. Just tap an app. You don't even need to think. AI will do it for you. Comfort is the product, and people are buying it with their potential. But Stoicism cuts through that illusion like a blade. The Stoics would look at our world and see not progress but sedation. A culture numbing itself with luxury, comfort, and emotion, while calling it freedom. Epictetus would say, "You are enslaved by what you crave, whether it's likes on a screen, approval from strangers, or the path of least resistance. You've traded your self-mastery for momentary pleasure. And that's the ultimate deal with the devil. Short-term ease in exchange for long-term weakness." Now think about the type of man society quietly encourages you to become. Passive, agreeable, soft-spoken, dependent, easily offended, addicted to praise, quick to complain. This isn't strength, it's surrender. You're not being raised to be resilient. You're being trained to be fragile. Every message tells you, avoid conflict, seek comfort, follow the herd. But the Stoics taught the opposite. They trained for adversity. They welcomed challenge. They believed the goal of life wasn't ease. It was excellence. And excellence demands struggle. Marcus Aurelius ruled an empire, fought wars, endured plagues, buried children, and still found time to write thoughts like, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." That's the Stoic mindset. Turning pain into power. Turning pressure into clarity. Not asking the world to be easier, but asking yourself to be stronger. But in the modern age, that mindset is rare. Because most people are conditioned from birth to seek validation, not virtue. From school to social media, you're taught to compare, complain, conform. Instead of building character, you build a brand. Instead of confronting your fears, you cover them with filters. The average person doesn't spend a single hour a day in solitude, reflection, or self-discipline. And then they wonder why they feel lost. Why they crumble when life gets hard. The answer is obvious. They've never been taught to build an inner fortress. They've only been taught to decorate the outer walls. Stoicism builds from the inside out. It teaches you to face discomfort head-on, to resist the pull of indulgence, to control what you can and let go of what you can't. And it all starts with one uncomfortable truth. You are not entitled to an easy life. You are responsible for a strong mind. This strength isn't loud. It doesn't show off. It doesn't seek applause. Real strength is silent. It's the man who gets up early, not because someone is watching, but because he said he would. It's the man who faces criticism without flinching. The man who controls his temper when he's provoked. The man who chooses hard work over the easy win. That's rare today. Why? Because the systems around you don't reward that. They reward reaction, not reflection. They reward addiction, not discipline. They reward comfort, not challenge. So if you want to live differently, stronger, you must first think differently. You must reject the default path. You must question what everyone else accepts. Here's the paradox. The modern world gives you every reason to be weak, but also every opportunity to be strong. You have access to more wisdom than Marcus Aurelius ever did. More tools than Seneca could have dreamed of. More freedom than Epictetus was ever allowed. And yet, most waste it. They scroll endlessly, complain constantly, seek comfort religiously. But a few, the Stoic few, use these modern tools to sharpen their ancient strength. They read, reflect, write, train, push themselves daily. They aren't perfect, but they are awake. They've seen through the noise. They've realized that external success means nothing if your internal world is in chaos. That's why the modern Stoic doesn't flex his wealth. He flexes his focus. He doesn't chase attention. He cultivates peace. He doesn't shout opinions. He lives by principles. You might ask, what does that look like in practice? It means you train your body, not to look good on Instagram, but to discipline your mind through physical challenge. It means you limit your inputs. Less news, less gossip, less noise, because clarity requires silence. It means you keep your promises, especially the ones you make to yourself. You say you'll wake up early? You do it. You say you'll finish the workout? You finish it. That's how trust is built, from you to you. And that self-trust is the core of Stoic strength. Because if you don't believe your own word, you'll never feel stable, no matter how successful you appear. Most people are emotionally and mentally exhausted, not from doing too much, but from doing too little that matters. They're busy, but not fulfilled, surrounded, but not connected, entertained, but not enriched. They filled every second of their day with activity and still feel empty. That's not life, that's sedation. The Stoic sees this and walks the other way. He simplifies. He subtracts. He chooses stillness over noise, focus over frenzy, meaning over momentum. And in doing so, he finds a strength that the modern world can't touch. Not because life is easy, but because his mind is forged in fire. The question is, who do you want to be? The man society wants, safe, agreeable, distracted? Or the man you were meant to be, sharp, grounded, untouchable? It's not about being perfect. It's about being principled. And principles are hard to keep in a world designed to pull you off course. That's why Stoicism is more relevant today than ever before. It's not ancient wisdom. It's timeless truth. And if you live it, truly live it, you'll become the rarest kind of person in the world today. A man who cannot be bought, broken, or bent. A man of depth in a shallow world. A man of strength in a culture of weakness. A man the Stoics would have recognized and respected. One of the few who choose the hard path. Not because it's trendy, but because it's true. Choosing the hard path. Becoming the Stoic in a weak world. There comes a point in every man's life when he must make a choice. Not a loud, public choice. Not one stamped with applause or shared with the world. A quiet, invisible choice. One that happens in the dark, when no one's watching. The choice to stop being ruled by weakness. To stop living as a slave to emotion, distraction, and comfort. To stop waiting for life to change, and instead begin changing himself. That is the Stoic decision. The commitment to the hard path. A path walked not by the masses, but by the few. By those who are tired of being tossed around by their feelings, shaped by their environment, and lost in the crowd. Because the truth is, most people will never make that choice. Most people will stay soft. They'll complain, react, seek pleasure, avoid pain, and wonder why they never feel whole. But a Stoic man looks that fate in the eye and says, "Not me. Not anymore." He doesn't wait to feel motivated. He acts from principle, not mood, because he understands a simple truth. Your habits shape your character, and your character shapes your destiny. So, when you wake up and don't feel like showing up, that's your moment. When life punches you in the face, and your mind screams to quit, that's your moment. When no one believes in you, supports you, or even notices you, that is your moment. Because it's in those silent battles that the Stoic is forged. Not in speeches, not in dreams. In action. Repeated, disciplined, invisible action. That's how you build the inner strength to carry a life that matters. That's how you become the man who walks into chaos with peace, faces insults with grace, handles pain with honor, and responds to life. Not with panic, but with purpose. Ask yourself, when was the last time you did something hard, simply because it was the right thing to do? When was the last time you endured discomfort without needing validation, or showed discipline when no one would have blamed you for quitting? That's Stoic virtue. It's not glamorous. It's not exciting. But it is rare. It's the man who keeps going when no one's clapping. The man who speaks the truth even when it costs him. The man who practices patience in a world that's addicted to speed. That man is not born. He is made. Day by day. Choice by choice. He doesn't need applause, because he's not performing. He's practicing. Every moment, every test, every storm. He sees it all as training. And over time, he becomes something unshakable. Something unbreakable. Something free. Freedom. That's the final truth. Most people think freedom is doing whatever you want. The Stoics knew better. True freedom is being free from your wants. Free from the craving to be liked, the addiction to comfort, the fear of failure. When you no longer need those things to feel whole. That is real power. And most will never taste it. Because it's bought with sweat, silence, solitude, and sacrifice. Not money. Not attention. Not trends. The Stoic pays the price willingly. Because he knows the reward is worth it. A steady mind. A clear heart. A life lived on his own terms. Not reactive. Not scattered. Not soft. So what does this mean for you? Right now? It means the world will try to pull you back. It'll tell you to take it easy. To fit in. To numb yourself. To stay comfortable. Stay distracted. Stay weak. It will reward you for being average. But deep down, you'll know the truth. That every shortcut has a cost. That every indulgence takes something from you. That every time you give in to emotion, you give up a piece of your power. And that voice in your head, the one that wants to rise, to lead, to endure, that voice will get quieter if you keep ignoring it. Until one day, it's gone. But it doesn't have to be that way. You can choose the other path. The path of the few. The path of the Stoic. You can start now. Not with some dramatic overhaul. With something small. Simple. Silent. Get up earlier than you want to. Finish the task you were avoiding. Say no to that cheap distraction. Forgive that person, even if they don't deserve it. Resist the urge to react. Choose discipline. Choose strength. Choose clarity. That's how it begins. One choice. Then another. Then 100 more. Until one day, people look at you and ask how you became so calm, so clear, so in control. And you won't have a fancy answer. Because it wasn't a moment. It was a mindset. A practice. A way of being. And even if no one ever notices, even if you walk this path alone, it's still worth it. Because you'll know. You'll feel it. You'll carry a quiet confidence that cannot be shaken. Not by money. Not by chaos. Not by people's opinions. You'll be the eye of the storm. The grounded one in a frantic world. The man who leads by example, not by noise. That is Stoicism in its purest form. That is strength in its highest expression. And that is the destiny waiting for every man who dares to reject the comfort of the crowd and walk alone toward mastery. So ask yourself one final question. Are you willing to become the man the world desperately needs, but rarely sees? The man who is steady in storms, silent in success, disciplined in desire, and grounded in principle? If the answer is yes, then the path is clear. And though it won't be easy, it will be worth it. Because when you become that man, you don't just win battles. You become someone who no longer needs to fight. You become someone who radiates strength without saying a word. Someone who leads without trying. Someone who lives in truth, walks in peace, and stands unshaken. That is Stoicism. That is your edge. That is your mission. Choose it. Live it. Become it. Now you know the truth. Not the sugar-coated version the world offers, but the raw, powerful truth the Stoics lived and died by. Most people stay weak because they avoid the hard path. They react instead of reflect. They chase comfort instead of character. They settle instead of rising. But that doesn't have to be your story. You've seen the difference. You've felt the pull. The desire to be stronger, calmer, wiser. And now the choice is in your hands. You can go back to scrolling, numbing, distracting. Or you can make the harder, braver decision to live like a Stoic, to build yourself from the inside out, to reject the noise, tame your emotions, and become the kind of man who doesn't crumble when life gets loud. A man of stillness in a world of chaos. A man of self-command in a culture of reaction. Here's what you need to remember. Strength is not given, it's earned. Every day. With every decision. With every act of discipline when no one is watching. Stoicism is not some ancient philosophy locked in dusty books. It is alive here now. In how you wake up, how you speak to others, how you face stress, how you carry yourself through pain. You don't have to be perfect. You just have to be consistent. Because every time you choose reason over reaction, principle over pleasure, courage over comfort, you're forging something powerful within yourself. Something unbreakable. And if this message hits something deep in you, if you felt like you were hearing something you already knew but had forgotten, then take this moment seriously. Use it. Don't let it pass. Decide right now to be different, to be stronger, to live by a standard, not by emotions, to seek discomfort, because you know that's where growth lives, to build a mindset that no storm, no insult, no failure can shake. That's not fantasy. That's a choice. Your choice. So here's your call to action. Start living the Stoic way today. Not tomorrow. Not when it's convenient. No. Take one principle from this video and apply it. Just one. Maybe it's waking up without hitting snooze. Maybe it's staying calm in a tense conversation. Maybe it's doing what you said you'd do, even when you don't feel like it. These small acts, repeated daily, will turn you into the rarest kind of person in today's world. A man of discipline, direction, and deep strength. And if you want more of this, more Stoic philosophy, more tools to help you sharpen your mindset, more reminders that you were not made to be average, then subscribe to this channel. This is where the few gather. This is where we train, where we grow, where we remember what matters. No fluff, no noise, just truth, just strength, just you versus you, every single day. Because the world doesn't need more noise. It needs more grounded men, Stoic men. And if you've made it this far, maybe that's who you were meant to be all along. Now go, live it, be it, walk forward with discipline, power, and peace. You were not born to be soft. You were born to be strong.